by house owner. This is the girl was staying renting a house in Munirka, and what happened was that the next neighbor is also from here, not from the northeast. He put a spy camera to watch the movement of the girl. So the girl had complained to the house owner by saying that this man is trying to harass me by putting the spy camera. But this how the landlord started. Wait for the timing. Yes, that's how the landlord started kicking her and then beating her up, so she had broken her face. So I just wanted to show the picture. You can go through. Yeah, this is also a lady who was kicked out by the house owner from her because he tried to take advantage of her, and then she reacted to that. So all her things were thrown out. This all happened in Munirka. Yeah, this is actually sexual harassment at workplace. I am getting a lot of calls like for non-payment of salaries. And then in a month, November, last year, in 1 month alone, I'm getting 30 to 40 calls of non-payment of salaries. And these are mostly women working in a spa. And this is one of the lucky cases because we got to meet a very understanding SHO, I think, in Gurgaon. So I was just working along with the team to break the call center and then catch the employer who refused to pay her salary. And she was also sexually harassed. So this is something that we are really dealing, and huge challenge is there. This is the thing that I was talking about. This is a recent case in Udaipur. He tried to take sexual advantage, and then she tried to react, and then he beat her up, so she had broken her arms, and she came here, and we had taken her to Sarjapur Hospital, and so this is the treatment that we this is something that I would like to say because last year one girl had an accident. That was in Gurgaon, and she was taken to one hospital, and the doctor said in front of everybody, that she is HIV positive. Like it's like a kid reading a book. So this is how he said, and then she went back home, broken, shattered, and then they test it again 2-3 times, but it says that she is negative. So there's so many things, that I really don't know what is happening here. And also one girl had an accident that was in 2012. I took up that case. It was hit and run case. She was crossing the road. All her bones were broken. She was unconscious, all blood. And she was taken to AIMS Trauma Center, and the doctor said, you know what, before I do any treatment, she has to undergo pregnancy test. So the sister was crying. She's just only 19 years old and just an undergraduate student. How can she get pregnant? But the doctor refused and said, and then you have to tell the sister and say that she is not pregnant. So that the other kind of thing. And the SHO from Vasant Kunj, say that, who told you to cross the road? It was your fault, and I'm not going to file an FIR. So after, running around for a week or so, that's how we lodged the FIR. Can you just go back? Yeah, here. And also, like recent, that was in the past 2 months, I took another victim. She was raped and also assaulted by her employer. That was the AIMS Trauma Center. And the doctor is also a lady. And then she went inside, but I had to go because I was very busy, and I left her there. And then what they did was, she was willing to undergo medical tests. And the comment of the doctor is that not willing to. And then she let her sign and sent back to the police station. And IO was very angry because one constable accompanied her to do the medical test. But the doctor said not willing to do it. These are the kind of treatment that we are facing. This is harassment by police, of course. And as I was talking about the Rengampi's case, it took more than 300 people and more than 27 hours to just lodge an FIR at the Multianagar police station. It was a hot summer. All of us were crying, protesting, but nothing happened. So we had to request the local MLA to intervene. Then after that only it was lodged, but then also 306, which is attempt to suicide, and still we protested again, and finally it is 302, but still there is no results, there is no action taken by the police. So maybe all of us collectively, we should really fight to get justice for the family. Yeah, this is something that I wanted to show. have had to face lewd remarks, ugly stares, and offhand comments.
There was a snake coming in one of the girls' rooms. So the security guard just came in and took away the snake. He said, "आप चटनी बना सकते हैं."
It is not fair if we are given like a battered body of Richard Loitam, or say a blemished character of Dana Samma, or even the untimely death of the recent Nidu Tanya. So obviously it is literally not a good feeling to feel alien in your own country.
Instead of taking it quietly, Alana decided to help other people from the Northeast who found themselves in distress in the national capital.
Just hearing the distress of others, really touched me. And I always felt the need to help them. I'm so passionate about it. And I think I will continue to help whenever people need me.
The helpline started in 2007 and was called Northeast Support Center and Helpline. And the phone never stopped ringing.
In a month, we get around 20 to 30 cases. This includes sexual harassment, physical assault, and unpayment of salaries. Sometimes we rush to the spot, we do some trauma counseling, and then we take them to the police station. Some of the cases we are able to solve, but there are also many cases that we are not able to solve. And we face a lot of challenges, especially in filing an FIR. Many don't really want to admit that racism exists in this country. My message to the people of India is, stop discriminating the Northeast people. Enough is enough. India is a diverse country, so let us celebrate the diversity of India.
Before we begin discussing the sexual violence that is faced by refugee women, may I request Seba Minai to set an overview?
Good morning, everyone. I wouldn't be taking much of your time, just trying to let you know what we have been discussing from yesterday, that is the discrimination against women and the violence which we go through today and tomorrow. Where we see people in conflict areas and during the natural calamities, we in India have been looking into it, and we see that a lot of women have been affected by it. It's like trauma, sexual harassment, torture. People take advantage in such situations. We have a lot of organizations working in India for these causes. A lot of people have been, all of us get together when such a situation comes in, and Gayatri Ma'am said in Muzaffarnagar recently, it was a lot of rape and all of us were there. The organizations were there to help the victims and the people around. I want to introduce you to a community, to people who are internationally displaced. We thought this was the right time to take advantage to introduce people, to sensitize people about the problems our friends are facing in India. My friends here are from Burma and Somalia. They're representing their communities. They will tell you exactly what they face and how they're here and what all they are facing as a community, the racial discrimination that is happening to them. The struggle that they face day-to-day life, it's not different from us, but the fact is that they are in a different country. They're here without any documents. They're here without any nationality. They just fled their country to protect their life from the persecution they would face in their own country. They just left everything, well-organized house and everything, and just had to run to save their life, their family, and they crossed the borders. It's during the borders crossing, during the stay, trying to settle in our country, what all they go through, they will let you know. And since we are talking about law, let me remind you, we don't have a refugee law in India. We don't have one policy for, if we say, for refugees, when it comes to document for them. They who are lucky can go to UNHCR, register themselves. They have an identity card. That is the only thing the communities, international communities will have, who have fled conflicts in their country and who have come here. I'm giving you this brief because I've been working with these people, and I know they will not be able to tell you. And I want you to look into the perspective of distinguishing them as refugees and women facing all the problems and the tortures and the trauma that we as women face every day also. So that for them it's insecurity in a country where they don't know when they'll be thrown out. Double insecurity when they're struggling for day-to-day life to earn for themselves because they don't have work permits. They cannot work in informal sectors. They are discriminated in every field. Without taking much time, I'll introduce my friend. We have Rosalind from Burma Refugee Community Delhi chapter. I have Hakima and Naima from RCDP, that is Refugee Community Development Program in Delhi, run by the refugee community for the refugees. So these are the members. They will introduce themselves and look into it. Please, thank you so much. Naima, can I have you here? Naima.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you to the organizers for giving us this wonderful opportunity. Like they have introduced a little bit about the situation. Not many Indians know that a lot of refugees from different countries are here in India. So I think this is a wonderful opportunity for us to be able to share about the problems and the kind of struggle that we face in India. And most of you are probably aware about Burma, I believe. Burma is a country in Southeast Asia, and it is also one of the closest neighbor country of India. Standing up can be a little bit intimidating, so I'll try my best. It is estimated that there are more than 100,000 Burmese refugees are in India, and most of them live in Mizoram in northeastern area as undocumented foreigners. A lot of Burmese refugees have been deported. Mass deportations have taken place twice in the past decade, and especially the people who are living in Mizoram, they are living in fear of being deported, or they are living in constant fear of being deported or being identified as foreigners because they don't have any documents, and UNHCR does not have access to Mizoram. And out of that 100,000 estimated population, about 6,000 are believed to be or estimated to live under UNHCR's protection in India. And since I'm based in India, I'll be mainly talking about the situation in New Delhi rather than the Mizoram scenario. And in New Delhi, once you are accepted or once you are recognized as refugees, you'll be given a refugee card, and with that you can apply for a temporary residential permit, which you need to renew every 6 months. And even renewing is a lot of headache. I mean, you need to provide electricity bill, you need to provide the address proof which has been written, or recommendation from your landlord, which the landlord would often refuse. So even getting documents to exist or to live here itself is a struggle already. And you might ask, why would the Burmese refugees flee from their country and come to India? The main reason is Burma has been going through political instability for the last 6 decades. And Burma is also known as one of the countries which has been having one of the longest running civil war in the world. As I speak right here, right now, civil war is still going on in Burma, especially in Kachin state and Shan states. So political instability is the main reason. And out of these 100,000 Burmese refugees, most of them, or 90% of them, are Chin refugees from Chin state in Burma. And as you can see here, Burma is a predominantly Buddhist country, but the Chins, one of the ethnic minorities group from Burma, Chins are 90% of them are Christians. So for the Chins, the reason why they have to flee from Burma and come to India or to other neighboring countries is because of persecution. Persecution on the basis of religion, persecution on the basis of race, and political beliefs are the main reasons. And there's so much that I can cover within 15 minutes, so I'll just try to jump and give an overview. Maybe we can discuss later on. And as I've said, the people who are living in Mizoram, they do not have any documents. So either you act like a Mizo and try to learn the language, try to integrate into the society and be invisible. That is how you try to live in India. But when it comes to refugees in New Delhi who are holding these refugee cards, at least you are identified with your true identity of being a Burmese. So at least that fact is better in that sense. But along with this identity card, there comes problems. In India, as Dr. Alana has said, even for Indians, it is hard already enough. And you can imagine how more difficult it must be for refugees without documents, without language, without being able to talk to your local people, being seen as alien, and also being Christian means you are immoral in the eyes of the locals. Most of the Burmese refugees live in West Delhi part of area, and as you all are aware, in Delhi, the place you live or the area that you live really matter when it comes to dealing with the locals. And in West Delhi, most of the people who are living in this West Delhi, or at least in the area where the refugees live, they all are migrants from other states. So they are not aware about Northeast, they are not aware about the refugee situation. They would just think that, okay, these people are Chinkies, they have this face, they dress up in Western clothes, they look different from us, they are Christians, they are immorals. That is all they can think. And the Burmese refugee women community, there are a lot of community-based organizations within Burmese community. And one of them is which I'm representing today, Burmese Refugee Women Delhi. It is an umbrella organization comprised of a lot of Burmese refugee groups from the community itself. And within the past 3 years, we have been documenting more than 200 cases of violence against women. And half of them are sexual violence cases. Out of 200, 100 cases are like sexual violence. That too only in the past 3 years. And these are not the exact figures. These are just the tip of the iceberg. Because a lot of women would refuse to come out open. So you can imagine the kind of violence that women have to go through. And as I've shared, the Burmese refugees started coming into neighboring countries, including India, mainly after the 1988 uprisings in Burma. The people were so fed up of the misgovernment, so there was an uprising in 1988. But the government cracked down on the protesters, thousands were thrown into prison, and thousands were forced to flee their country, and thousands fled to Thailand and to India. And for the Chins, since India is closer, the Chins would come to India. And from 1988 onwards, we have been here. It has been more than 2 decades, almost 3 decades. You can imagine, even within the past 3 years, we have been documenting 200 cases again of violence against women. You can imagine the amount of violence that women must have gone through within this more than 2 decades. And till today, we have only seen, today as in the scenario of Delhi, we have only seen one case of successful prosecution when it comes to refugee women. Even that too, she said she has to go to the court more than 40 times. And whenever she goes to the courts, the husband has to accompany her. And this is what she has to tell us after the successful prosecution. I'm happy that the perpetrator has been perpetrator has been arrested and that he has been thrown into prison. But I do not see any difference in my life, this is what she said. Because for a refugee who has to think about the next meal, going to court more than 40 times, not being able to speak to the authorities in your own language, depending on the interpreters, calling your husband to come with you all the time, hence he had to take leave, which means his income or their income is also cut. In that sense, it is a lot of struggle. And despite of going all through that, she said, I have been promised to be given compensation from the government. Until date, she has not been receiving this. And I believe SLIC, which is also part of HRLN, they are helping with this case. They will be also aware of it. But I just would like to highlight this case because this is the only successful prosecution. But even for this successful one, she don't see any difference because for an Indian, it might have been a victory that the perpetrator had been sent to jail. But for a refugee woman who has to think about the next meal, she cannot care less or more like when it comes to these kind of cases. But of course, you might question why only one successful prosecution out of all these cases. One of the other reason is the refugee women do not want to go to the police at all because they don't see any point in it because they've seen over the years that the police do not really care. You would be going there taking your own interpreter, which means a lot of effort from the refugees' point of view, taking the interpreter, going there, dealing with them. But the police will not care at all. And in some cases, not only some cases, in most of the cases we've seen, the police are complicit in these acts. And if I may pick out one particular case, a few years ago, 3 years ago, a deaf and mute refugee girl was gang raped. And she was a young girl. Her underwear was soaked with blood. She was rushed to the hospital, but we believe the culprits the perpetrators have gone to the hospital before the refugees could reach, because they know that refugees would only go to one hospital, which has been assigned by UNHCR. So they would go to that hospital, but by the time they reached there, the doctor refused to give up the underwear which has been soaked with blood. So they do not have any proof. So they went again to the police station. The police refused to file an FIR. Despite of everyone knowing, despite of everyone witnessing this case, the police refused to file an FIR. And worse still, they even make the brother sign a document which states that they would like to withdraw the case, or they would, that nothing had happened. And the brother, he did not know what was written in that document. He just signed. It was only after some months that people started informing them that that was about it. So these are the kind of reactions that we've been receiving. And in some cases, like Dr. Alana shared, the locals would threaten, since it's always easy to identify, I'll pick up another case again. An 8-year-old girl was, a local man was attempting to rape an 8-year-old girl. But luckily, the friend of that 8-year-old girl, who is a 10-year-old boy who was playing along with the girl, saw the man trying to attempt to rape her. So she was saved on time. And the police were called. At that time, what the father said was, I called the police because I want the police to scold the man, not because I want him to be arrested. See, you out here another vulnerability factor. For the refugees, we are not aware of the laws, we are not aware of how things work. You call the police because you want the police to scold the perpetrator, but once the police arrived, they said this case has this little girl being involved, we have to call the Children Welfare Association. They came in, they said we have to file a case in any case, otherwise your child will be taken away from you. So the father was forced to file an FIR, but the local leaders, they came in a group, more than 20 of them they came, they threatened the girl's family, the witness boy's family, they should not stand as witness. And they also threatened the whole Chin refugee community, that the whole Chin refugee community will be thrown out of here. But since the case has to be filed, it went ahead, the case was filed, the man was arrested. And true to their words, there were a lot of retaliatory attacks against the community members. One woman was dragged, one man was stabbed. I have his photo, maybe in the last part. This one. As one of the retaliatory attacks, this man was stabbed in unprovoked incident. And the boy who stands as witness to help the girl, he was also slashed recently, last month, and he had to be given 18 stitches. Just a 10-year-old boy. You can imagine the kind of violence that we face, not only from the perpetrators, but from the locals themselves. So there's a lot of things involved for a refugee woman to even think of going to the police and file a case, but it doesn't end just there, only with the perpetrator's family or with her family or with the refugee community. We've seen these kind of cases a lot. And And if I may add on, coming to domestic violence within the community itself, like they have shared, we only have refugee card and temporary residential permits. No work permit is given, no other documents are there. So most of the refugees, most of the Burmese refugees are forced to work in the informal sector within this West Delhi area where we live. And most of the people end up working in factories, and in the factories they are discriminated in their wages, in their working hours. A lot of women have complained about sexual violence in the workplace. And if you go around the refugee community, if you talk to almost everyone, you would come to know that people would earn only about 3,500 rupees per month. And you know the rent, how high the rent is in Delhi. They have to pay 3,300 for the rent, and they have to live by with 500 rupees for the rest of the month with 2-3 children. So life is so difficult. Security problem and financial crisis is the main reason that the refugees have to go through. And especially in this workplace, since the men would be so frustrated earning that much of amount, which is not enough at all to cover your basic necessities, they would vent out their frustrations on the women. And we have seen a lot of domestic violence within the community because of financial crisis. A lot of violence against young girls within their own family concerns because of this financial crisis. I'm sorry. There's so much that I can cover, so I think I'm running out of time. Maybe I just would like to go through the slides for the last minute. This is a recent study done by Joint IDP Profiling Service and Jesuit Refugee Service. As you can see out here, 80% of Chin had experienced physical assault. That is unbelievable, as you can see. I mean, and as Dr. Alana has shared, finally I would like to add this point. Problems are not to be compared, and we are not competing for problems, or we're not competing for troubles. But as she said, even for citizens, it is hard enough already to get justice, hard enough already to be cared by the authorities. You can imagine for the refugees how difficult it must be. Without any legal documents, without any support system around you, without the with the language barrier, with this financial crisis going on around, with the kind of background, background, when I say background, the persecution background, you've suffered already a lot enough in your country, and you will continue to suffer here. So that all these factors make the refugees population, the refugees women more vulnerable, so you can imagine. And this is one of the scenes. A lot of refugees women would be forced to pick up rotten vegetables or leftover vegetables from the night market because of the financial crisis. And we have seen a lot of women facing sexual violence or this problems by picking up vegetables at night. But you might say, again, why would they want to venture out at night to be attacked? Again, because they are forced to, because of financial crisis, like I said. So these are just some of the problems. I hope you get the gist of what I'm trying to say. I'm running out of time, so I'm sorry. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, everyone. I am Hakima, and I am from Somalia. Does anybody know about Somalia?
Yes.
Yes. It's a country located in the Horn of Africa. It's been, violated, and there was civil war still 23 years. From 1991, the central government collapsed. So they have to fight clan-based fighting. So you can feel how, when government collapses, how people will be. And again, if they fight, with clans, it's the worst. So here, we are refugees in Delhi. Hyderabad, and Mysore. So Somali refugees came here after a long way from Africa here. You know, when clan-based